Racing games are one of the most popular video game genres, and I'm sure you've already played some yourself. These games have evolved from looking like this to ultra-realistic experiences such as Forza, Gran Turismo, or Assetto Corsa, for example. But what if I told you that there are still many issues with today's racing games and simulators? In this video, we'll take a look at what needs to change with these games, and we'll also explore the ones that have actually begun solving these issues. Car games have many different subgenres, including arcade racing, off-road racing, street racing, but I'm sure that when most people hear racing game, they imagine something like this. These are racing simulators. Made for recreating the thrill of real-life motorsports as closely as possible, they have become incredibly popular among the fans of car games. The main reason is because they almost feel like real life, and people like having the opportunity to experience racing without even leaving their house, and there's simply nothing dangerous about it. Well, except for direct drive steering wheels. Anyways, to see how racing simulations started, we have to go back to when a game was introduced by Sony called Gran Turismo. Now, don't get me wrong, this certainly wasn't the first racing game ever. That title would have to go to Grand Track 10 by Atari. But, I mean, just look at it. It looked like all other games in the 70s. It was just a white dot driving around other white dots, and there was not much more to it. Let's get back to the first Gran Turismo game. With the release of the revolutionary PlayStation 1 in 1995, an equally as revolutionary racing game came with it about 2 years later. The aforementioned Gran Turismo. Now, this game was unlike any other at this time. You would get a massive virtual garage with over 100 cars, and the details in this game were just amazing. Every car felt exactly how it was supposed to feel, and the players loved it. And in the following 8 years, this game dominated the market until a little company called Microsoft came in and said, "I'm getting this money." And so they did, with their new game going by the name of Forza Motorsport. Sure, at first it didn't really take off as the developers intended to, but with the following releases, it became a worthy competitor to the Gran Turismo series. These two games still retain its players, and they continue to be updated with new releases to this day. Though you can find other, less mainstream simulators like Assetto Corsa, iRacing, R-Factor, and more that provide a more sort of hardcore sim racing experience. All of these games focus on track racing, but racing simulation extends further than this. We also have rally simulators, which also have two dominating games, WRC and Dirt Rally. And lastly, there are open world driving games, which try to combine everything into one and offer not only races, but cruising, drifting, and basically everything else. These are my personal favorite type of driving game and possibly the most popular subgenre of racing games. And in 2006, Atari released Test Drive Unlimited, followed by the second release in 2011, which were amazing open world driving games. And a year later, Forza decided to jump on the bandwagon as well with the Horizon series, which went on to become one of the most popular racing games. I also have to mention BeamNG Drive because, as you'll see later in the video, this game plays a major role in the innovation of the racing game genre. Over the half century that racing games have existed, there have been many changes done to improve them. If you compare the first and the latest ones, you can really see the incredible difference that game developers have made. But the driving experience is not all about realistic graphics. Sure, your first impression will be the looks, but once you start playing, the gameplay is all that matters. And that's where the first problem of modern driving games is. The gameplay progression in many of these games is simply terrible. For example, look at Forza Horizon. As your first car, you get to choose between 3 high-powered vehicles, and you can earn money far too quickly, honestly. And some people might like that, but I'm sure at least some of you agree with me. On the other hand, there are games which have perfected this progression aspect, such as Test Drive Unlimited. Someone might argue that you still get handed pretty nice cars at the beginning, which you do, but you still have to grind for a while until you get that brand new Ferrari you wanted the whole time. Plus, the experience of buying the car is also exceptional. It's like you're actually configuring a real car in real life with the amount of personalization you get. Gran Turismo 7 is also well done in terms of progression, and actually Forza Motorsport 4, for example, wasn't bad either. And speaking of Forza Motorsport 4, if you look at the car list of this game, you'll see something a bit unusual. Regular, ordinary cars. And why is this so special, you might ask? Well, other games often only include cars meant for track use and sporty driving, but I would actually find throwing a Prius, for example, around the track really fun, because even driving a slow car can be really enjoyable, and I think numerous games would benefit from an everyday car expansion. BeamNG also did this really well. The majority of the cars in-game are just average cars you would find on the road, and every car has its own configuration, so you have much more vehicle selection options than it seems like at first. That, combined with the accurate physics of BeamNG, means that you can actually feel the consequences of racing an old beater on the track. Now, let's quickly take a look at some newly released or upcoming games which are getting the players excited about the future. Let's start with a game that you've probably seen everywhere lately, and that is Forza Motorsport 8. While it's definitely not a bad game by any means, from the videos I've seen, it seems to lack the character that, for example, Gran Turismo has, and it's really not that exciting. You've also probably seen those videos comparing the details of Forza and Gran Turismo, and I have to say that, in my opinion, there is a clear winner. While the new Forza isn't exactly something to write home about, the third iteration of Test Drive Unlimited will hopefully be the opposite. It's an open world racing game, and well, when I say open world, I mean it, because the previous two games had one-to-one recreations of Oahu and Ibiza, and the newest one did the exact same thing but with Hong Kong Island. This is one feature which makes Test Drive Unlimited such an enjoyable game. And unlike in other games, you can play for a month or two and still explore roads that you haven't even driven on before. And the other reason people are getting excited for this game is its incredible progression system, which I have mentioned before. More racing games need to have fun and challenging gameplay, and I hope this upcoming Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown is gonna retain many of the features from the previous game. As I said earlier, the graphics are not the only key to realism, which you can again see in BeamNG. Let's be honest, even though they're not bad, BeamNG's graphics are surely a bit behind the competition. What sets this game apart though is the perfectly done physics model, which includes things such as suspension simulation, aerodynamics, and of course, the immaculate crash physics. And they aren't only making progress in the world of gaming, but also in actual scientific vehicle testing. It has a whole tech division which has collaborated with various different universities, research institutes, and even Audi, the car brand, has done some experiments with BeamNG. I don't just want to praise this game, but if you don't know me by now, this channel is basically based around this one game. And with the recent addition of VR support, which is by no means flawless though, it has become one of, if not the most realistic driving game ever. And that's a pretty bold claim, but if you look at those dream features I mentioned before, you can actually see that BeamNG has, or is in the process of implementing almost all of them. It has the physics, the wide variety of cars, and also a work-in-progress career mode. So, in a few years, everyone could be playing BeamNG, right? Or is there a completely new and different game coming that's gonna outshine everything else? Well, we have to wait to find out, and seeing as the games are still getting better and better, we definitely have a reason to be excited. And if you enjoyed, let me know by liking the video or subscribing. And if you have any other ideas or you know something about these games, let me know in the comments, and see you in the next one.